Hi, welcome to Skip's Corner, where I cover Nashville's baseball history and events and introduce you to players, coaches, and other fans. Nashville has been blessed with great innovators. Newt Fisher, back in the 1900s, helped form the Southern Association and developed a Nashville ball club that won the first two Southern Association championships in 1901 and 1902. And then later, Fay Murray bought into the Nashville Vols Ball Club and in the fall of 1938 brought Larry Gilbert to Nashville from New Orleans, one of the most successful minor league baseball managers ever. Those two together were innovators. Larry Gilbert later, after Fay Murray died, continued to be respected. And then you have some great sports writers like Fred Russell and Grantland Rice and many others that were really set baseball apart from other sports, I think, because they loved the sport so much, but really did a lot for every sport there is, as they reported in Nashville and beyond. They were so well respected in their field, too. But one of the most respected, I think, and one of the greatest innovators, not only of Nashville baseball, but he taught minor league baseball owners and general managers how to bring people to the ballpark. And that's Larry Schmittou. He and I sat down together and we had a chance to talk. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to him. But I'm also grateful that he honored me with his presence and his voice and telling different stories about his life in baseball. So here's Larry Schmittou. At least part one. We're going to break this up into part one and part two. I hope you really enjoy listening to Larry Schmittou. We're here with Larry and Shirley Schmittou in their home, and we're grateful that you would take some time to talk to us. It's just a real thrill for me. I've admired you for a long time, and I called you once in a little thing that I did that you were the number one influence on Nashville baseball history, and I still believe that to this day.
Thank you.
There are so many others that have been involved in Nashville baseball, and you would know some of those names. Tim Corbin is one, and Tom Wilson, who started the Elite Giants and had his own park. But you're still number one. I think you'll be number one for a long time. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me
My
today.
pleasure.
You know, we all have a beginning somewhere, and your beginning with your family was where? In what part of Nashville did you grow up?
We were in West Nashville, over close to the prison. We weren't in the Nations, but we were right across Richland Creek from there. So at that time, it was a county, not the city. So we had a little bit of land, which we farmed, had a great set of parents.
And your parents what did they do? What type of occupation did they have?
My dad, Egbert Schmittou, was a disabled veteran from World War I. He got gassed, that mustard gas, and so he was disabled. My mother at one time was a school teacher, but that was during the time if you got married, if you was a lady, you couldn't teach. So she had to suspend being a teacher to be married, and a hard worker. She'd plow, hoe, whatever we had to do, milk a cow. So she could do it all.
Were your parents baseball fans?
Yes, they were. We had a big old radio, and we always listened to Nashville Vols when Larry Munson was calling them. So they weren't, I wouldn't say avid baseball fans, but they loved baseball.
Did you go to many games?
No, we couldn't afford that. But my mom used to have a knothole night or something like that at Sufferdale, and every now and then kids would get in free that day, and she'd save 50 cents or something and would go down and see a game. I remember the first game I ever saw was, I guess, 1949, and I know Carl Sawatsky was there. And I remember left-handed pitchers, and I'm left-handed.
Yeah.
And I can remember it was so popular, people sitting on the ice house behind the right field fence. I thought, Sufferdale, that must be the greatest ballpark in the world. When I played on it, I found out it wasn't. But that was my early introduction to, I guess, professional baseball is.
Yeah.
We knew it back then.
Right. And then there was a special manager there that I think you've taken on his name, haven't you?
Well, my mom, we didn't know Larry Gilbert, but because he was manager or whatever, I guess he was either manager, general manager, whatever. They knew him before that, before I was born with the Vols, and we bought groceries on a credit, I guess. His name was Lawrence Mayo, and he'd promised my dad if he'd named me after him, he'd give him a suit of clothes. But so he named me Larry Lawrence. But Mr. Mayo never gave my dad his suit of clothes because Lawrence wasn't first.
I love that story. Did your mom passed away on a special day for you, right? In more ways
She
than
passed
one.
away on the day we were supposed to open the Sounds, and as we got delayed because of didn't have the stadium ready. But she had been very, very sick for Shirley might know better 2 or 3 years
Right.
before because she'd had several strokes.
Yeah. You've been out of baseball as it is for quite a number of years. You have any regrets about not continuing with baseball as long as you're doing other things?
No, I had a great run. I started coaching when I was in high school. I loved coaching, but coaching was changing during that time. It wasn't like, the coach would say you do it, you square around the bunt, and somebody said, "Well, I don't want to do that. I do it." I kind of, I don't know what you call it, burnout or whatever. I was ready to do something else, and when the Sounds and the Titans came to town, I knew where the money was going,
Right.
and it was time.
We've seen a lot of success with Tim Corbin, what he's done at Vanderbilt, but you really laid the foundation for that. What do you think about the Vanderbilt today, their success, and what Tim Corbin has been able to do at Vanderbilt?
Well, I refer to Tim Corbin in this way. Nick Saban is the Tim Corbin of football. That's how good he is. Different era. I didn't have many scholarship, didn't have any when I went there. And he has taken that program to the highest level. That's not easy, even if you have a lot of players. You got to keep them all happy. You got to choose the right players. You got to put them in the right position. And more important than that, I think he's developed some good human beings in habits other than just baseball. So he's done an outstanding job.
When 50 years ago, 1973, you led Vanderbilt to its first SEC championship, even though you won a couple of Eastern Division championships, I think. 50 years ago, do you still stay in touch with any of those players?
Oh, I stay in touch with almost all of them, or they stay in touch with me. That's our '72 team. I think was better than our '73 team, even though we got beat by Ole Miss when they had a few ineligible players. We should have had a three-peat. And so a lot of those players, I had one player, Chuck Boyd, who played for me from the time he was 8 years old till he graduated from college. So a lot of those players I had also coached in the summer before I became the Vanderbilt baseball coach. So they are a very, very special group. They've gone on to do outstanding things outside of being a baseball player, whether it be a banker, a doctor, or just a business person. So I'm very happy with them, and I'm always happy to see them. And some of them look like they can still play. Ted Shipley and Mike Willis, I think they can still go out and play.
Well, you've impacted and molded lives, just like you mentioned Tim Corbin has, and I think that's quite a tribute to you as well. What about someone like Wayne Garland, some of those other players you mentioned that Boyette had played with you from 8 years old? What other players did you have on some of your teams?
Well, Wayne Garland actually won 20 games, and I've been harping at Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame why he's not in it. I saw Wayne 2 or 3 months ago to give him some memorabilia. He did very, very well, had a distinguished major league career. Sam Ewan played for me before I went to Vanderbilt, and I got him to UT and then had to play against him. He's done well. He got a doctor's degree, and he's up in Missouri somewhere. John McLean recently retired from Genesco. A lot of those guys that played for me before I became a college coach went on to play college ball. I'm just as happy with them. That's Wayne was a high draft choice and chose to, before I went to Vanderbilt to go to junior college, and he signed. And so, the losing Jeff Peoples to such an early age, Jeff was one of a kind. And then some of my other players that's passed on, Jerry Reasonover, Robert Hendrickson, who I coached from the time he was little leaguer on through, and Bill Hart, and some of my guys are gone. And but they certainly contributed a lot to my career.
Jeff Peoples was a special player for you, I know. Did he really throw that $50 across the Cumberland River? Is that what that was?
Jeff could do some amazing things, and he's a great football player. And when he came to Vanderbilt, they tried to change his running style. And one day, one of the coaches asked me, he said, how do you get so much out of Peebles? And I said, I just give him the ball and a scouting report. And there was something about him, too, that a lot of people regard as luck. I'll give one example. We were needing to beat Florida, and we were in Florida, and we had them by one run in the eighth inning, I believe, and they loaded the bases, 2 outs, and he's got a 3-0 count on the batter, and he throws a ball that almost hit him in the head, but it hit his bat and bounced back to Jeff and threw him out. We win the game. Things like that just happened for Jeff.
Yeah, there you go.
We played UT, gave up 5 home runs in 1 inning. Tom Powell hit a grand slam home run the bottom of the ninth to us to win 9-8. My wife had gone home. She didn't see the end of that game. Things like that. Jeff had all the ability. Pro career was cut short with a car accident when he got moved up from Florida State League to another league. And but all of our people, the best thing I can tell you, we was going to play Southern California in the Riverside tournament. They'd won 5 straight national championships. And they were bugging us terrifically during infield practice. We had the worst infield. And I think my coach asked, what are you going to tell the team? So we go down, and I said, guys, we'll win. Peoples is pitching. Let's go. And we did.
Wow.
And they had Fred Lee and all them superstars. And he's just about as a special a guy that you could have confidence in. That was a main thing that our team just felt like if Peoples is pitching, we're going to win.
Great.
Might be 1-0, might be 10-9, but we will win.
Great story. What about Steve Berger? Tell me about Steve Berger.
Best competitor I've ever had. We named our youngest son after Steve. He, that's just all city in football, basketball, and baseball. He never got to play the first few years because it's always football, football, football. Finally, for his senior year, he's going to play as well as go through spring practice. He's such a competitor. I remember one time we were playing Georgia in our division race, and he had gone through 2 hours of football. He had his full football gear on, leaned in the dugout. I think the other team had men on first and second, nobody out. You going to need me, coach? Yes, there are. He had blood coming down his nose. Before the inning was over, I put him in, and he pitched, gave up 1 hit the rest of the game. Never lost a game for us. Just, if he could have devoted full time to baseball, been amazing, but he's outstanding. I remember he played every position in football, and finally going to start him against UT the year, and I told Coach Pace, I said, you're going to regret starting him. He said, why? I said, because he's going to do so good, everybody's going to wonder why you didn't have him there all year. And he did. He almost beat him.
So he was a competitor. You'd like to have a team full of competitors like him, I guess.
He was just non-assuming about his ability, but he's good.
How did you get to Vanderbilt? Because not many people would remember, I don't think, that you were also a football recruiter at Vanderbilt, too.
Actually, I was a head coach at Goodlettsville, and Mr. Neely came to see me and said, we want you to be our baseball coach. And I said, why would I want to do that? Y'all are terrible. And he said, yes, we are, but we're going to change that. You'll be our first full-time baseball coach. We'll figure what else you're going to do. So I went there not knowing I was going to be the football recruiter. But after I got there, they said, you're going to be the football recruiter. And I did that for, I don't know, until they outlawed full-time recruiters on the road, I believe in 75. And I did pretty good at that. We voted in the top 10 football recruiting for a while. And that's how I made up my mind we weren't going to lose anybody from Middle Tennessee. And the only one we ever lost to UT was Jimmy Gaylor. And Gaylor wanted to kick for UT and play baseball for Vanderbilt. And I said, I don't think he can do that. So,
Did you recruit Mike Wright?
yes, I did. And I did because he was coming along at the end. And I knew Mike was going to be a high draft choice. Pancos was worried he's going to lose him. I only was with Fred for 1 year, and then they passed that rule you couldn't be a football recruiter. So, I'd known Mike ever since Little League ball, and so I had a heavy hand in it. I don't know if I was the one that signed him or not, but again, another very talented athlete.
Pretty good athlete.
Hit the longest home runs ever been hit at Vanderbilt.
In 1963, the Nashville Vols went away, and Sulphurdale pretty much sat silent until 15 years later, you came on with a team that was ultimately named the Nashville Sounds. How did that thought process start? Because you're still coaching baseball at Vanderbilt.
Well, Shirley kept having these kids. We had 5 of them, and I wasn't making much money. So the AD at Vanderbilt at that time was not really pushing athletics university. So it was time for me to get out and do something else to support my family. And Chattanooga had brought baseball back, and I always admired a guy at UT named Chuck Rowe. He's the one that really started promoting Big Orange Country and promotions. And so I figured Nashville would support new time baseball if you promoted it not as a game, but just a fun place to be. But we didn't have any place to play. So I just came up with the idea, let's bring baseball back. One thing led to another, and I went to the park board. They said, well, you can't have Centennial, you can't have Shelby, but we're going to disregard the softball fields at Fort Nigley. If you come up with a plan, you can have that. So I went to the city, and they quickly said, we're not going to put any money in behind this, money at all. In order to do that, I got to get a stadium built. So had a couple of tries with a couple other people, and the only thing left was to take in some partners. And so Conway Twitty came to my rescue. He had seen a drawing of what I thought it would be, and he invited me out. I didn't know Conway. I'd had his son in a camp, but I had never met him. Without his encouragement, his money, which he first said, I'll just do it all, you and me, but together. His accountant had been a accountant for Roy Clark, and Roy had lost his money investing in a team in Tulsa. So Conway sank back to 20%, but he got Kyle Smith and L.E. White and said, let's find, if you can't find them, I'll do it. So with that encouragement, I didn't think the stadium would cost that much. So we raised $300,000, and but we're still way short. I went back to the city, said, here's where we are. I need y'all to loan me $200,000. We can't do that. I said, well, why don't we try and see? I told Scobie. So the council approved to loan me $200,000. Still didn't have enough, so we mortgaged our house, got it going, and it was a success from day one.
Was everybody supportive? Were there a lot of naysayers? In fact, I'm actually wondering whether the local sports writers were fair to you when you came up with the idea.
How about 99% against and 1% for?
Yeah.
Edgar Allen, good friend, said, we're not going to get involved in this. We got involved with the Vols and it didn't work. John Bibb, friend of lifetime, we went to lunch one day and he said, Schmittou, you're going to go broke doing this. I said, I'm already broke, so I can't do. He said, well, I don't think it's going to work, but let me know what I can do to help you. So everybody weren't naysayers, but most of the people were very skeptical. I'd rather say that than a naysayer, that anything like this would work. And I had my own plan of I'm going to make this fun. We'll still have a good game, but I'm going to make it fun.
Well, I think you've taught a lot of people how to make it fun from that point on. But you'd had to have some kind of a major league affiliation too. So how did that work out where the Cincinnati Reds became the parent club for the Nashville Sounds?
Well, first place, I thought every club would want to have come to Nashville if we had a ballpark, but we didn't have a ballpark. So we went, well, once we got all those other things I just mentioned in line, Farrell Owens and I went to the baseball winter meetings. We put a little note in all the different clubs' mailbox or room box and figured maybe we'll hear from somebody. And the only one we heard from was Chief Bender. And he said, y'all get a ballpark, I'll put a team there. At that time, they were in Three Rivers, Canada. So expansion wasn't coming along until the next year, though, the year after 78 and 79. They're going to have to take two clubs away from the Eastern League for a while in order to Nashville to get to come in. So I had Memphis lined up to come in, but Fogelman didn't want to do it that way. So anyway, I went and saw Bobby Bragan, who was head of the minor leagues at that time. He said, you get that diamond going, I'll get that team there. And however they did that, by making promises to the two in Canada that was losing, that you'd get an expansion franchise. That's how we wound up with Cincinnati and wound up in the Southern League.
And I read once where maybe Minnesota had made some kind of overture to you also about Nashville becoming an affiliate. Were they ever very serious about it? Was that just kind of a passing?
No, it was the Yankees.
Yankees, okay.
The Yankees wanted a AAA franchise.
Right.
And so AAA was expanding the next year. And I wanted the AAA. I forget how all that worked out, that we didn't get AAA right off the bat. Major leagues made those decisions of where they were going to put expansion teams. So, and we wouldn't have had an expansion team. We would have had, the Yankees would have been moving from, I think at that time they were on the West Coast AAA or something, to Nashville, the AAA. Instead, the Yankees wound up going to Columbus, and I forget who got the AAA franchises.
I've always wondered about the name Sounds. I mean, I know growing up here, the Chet Atkins Nashville Sounds in the music business, how he added violin music and other kinds of instruments to the background sounds of local singers, performers. Did that have something to do with the name Nashville Sounds? And how did that come about that you decided that was going to be the name?
Well, I think the statute of limitations has run out, so I had the name picked out before I had the contest. But I decided to have a contest and say the Vols are not eligible. So we had a lot of people submit names, and I guess we had maybe 100 or so that submitted the name Sound, which I'd already picked out. I already had the logo made up. So that's how it became a Sounds. I just said, I don't want the cats. I don't want the pickers. People make fun of picking your nose. And I went up, there's a printing place up above us, Roper Printing. And one of the Vanderbilt players later on, Cam Hazen's mother, was the artist there. And I went up with a paper napkin and said, I want this guy swinging a guitar that's kind of out of shape in red, white, blue. And she drew that logo up for me.
Why red, white, and blue?
Patriotic.
Didn't have anything really to do with the Vols, who were red and blue.
I didn't want nothing to do with the Vols.
Right.
They had their own history.
Right.
They should stay that. I didn't want people referring to this versus old Vols. So, in fact, I didn't even remember what color the Nashville Vols were.
But there was no opportunity to go to the old Sulphurdale site, which in those days was a hole, I think, in the ground, maybe filled in, but there was no ever any consideration to go to that.
The only consideration I had was Fort Negley, which I didn't want, but it's the only choice I had.
But if you had a choice, what would that have been?
Centennial
Park. After 2 seasons as a Reds affiliate, then who becomes the major league affiliation for the Sounds?
The Yankees.
New York Yankees. So they're part of their need to come to Nashville. It only took them 2 years to come to Nashville. What about George Steinbrenner? What kind of relationship did you have with George Steinbrenner?
Absolutely great. George, that's the only Nashville Bridge Company at that time. And George, when he went somewhere, he was going with a splash. I never asked George Steinbrenner for anything that we didn't get, and which only thing I ever asked for was exhibition games. But he went above and beyond that. He became an old-timer speaker because I asked him to do it. He agreed to be roasted because Mr. Garrett needed to raise some money for an eye cornea transplant at Vanderbilt. He sent us players that we never asked for. I remember one day, Mrs. Browning just showed up. And, we were in intention to win the pennant. He just sent us some help, unassuming. He'd asked me about people in the league that was on somebody else's team that maybe was a great player. My whole family, we went to New York. This is a story Shirley can verify. We're there. He puts us up in this fancy hotel. I mean, Central Park. Maybe she can remember the name, but we're there, and then we go to the game. They put us in his suite. Our youngest son, Steve, had a loose tooth, and Pinella's wife and kid is in the suite, George's suite. George, he's not bashful about criticizing Pinella right in front of everybody. But anyway, our son loses his tooth. And on the floor, looking for that tooth for the tooth fairy is, I guess, maybe Shirley and George. George found a tooth. And I don't know what he gave Steve. He probably gave him $100 bill for it. I don't know. But I always think, here's George Steinbrenner looking for a guy's tooth. The game's going on the field. But he was just super, and that's it. Stories of him and how he took care of old Black Cat Riley and all those things of Nashville is legendary. He may have had his faults, but never had any for us.
I think when you signed an agreement with him, didn't he promise to play an exhibition game here, but it didn't happen maybe in 1980 because the players went on strike? Was that 1980?
Yogi came during the strike, 80, 81, whatever, and spent 8 days with us. And but actually, most of my negotiation with the Yankees, as far as the working agreement, was Jack Butterfield, who tragically got killed. Whatever they promised, they more than delivered. I forget what year they came. I remember Reggie Jackson was coming off a disabled list. I guess that was 81.
You had an interesting story you told me one time about Reggie Jackson. You took him to eat at Haptown's?
Yeah, Reggie came in off. I didn't take him to eat, but Farrell did. He came in before the team got there and walked in the office, said, "Where's the place I can get something to eat?" And I said, "Well, what do you want?" He said, "I want some greens." So I picked up the phone, and Hap didn't open till 11. This is about 11:15. I said, "Hap, could you open up early for a little bit for Reggie Jackson come over to eat?" Hap didn't know who Reggie Jackson was. But he said, okay. Farrell took him over. Here's the highest paid player in Major League Baseball at the time. And Reggie orders 2 or 3 things, and he gets down to the end. He said, "I'd also like some of them deviled eggs." And old Hap looked up unassuming, calling Farrell. "You know that'll be another 25 cents, don't you, brother?" Anyway, when the game was over and I interviewed Reggie, all he could talk about was a great meal he had.
You had some terrific crowds. I think that first season in 78, you led all of minor league baseball, about 380,000. Back in those days, that was quite a number of fans to come. How important was it to get fans into the stadium, even though you may have had Kroger buyout night?
Well, first year we had 13 rainouts. And they feel we didn't get grading done right. And we went on an 8-day homestand. We just put a grader in there, graded, and had straw out there. And I remember Memphis came in to play, and we were going to play a doubleheader and make up. And Felipe Alou came in. Worst fill I ever saw, Larry, worst fill I ever saw. And they beat us both games. And I went down, and as I was leaving, I said, "What do you think about that field today now, Felipe?" Best field I ever saw, Larry. Every time he'd see me, best field I ever saw. We had so many bills still to pay, and we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know about deposits. We just went from day to day. We got through, finished that stadium up. The next year, we really drew well, 500,000 or whatever. We had a good team. 79 won a championship. People knew that we were going to promote the Sounds logo with things we were going to give away. I just had the philosophy every Friday and every Saturday, we're going to have a promotion night. They're going to walk away with something that's got our logo on it that they could wear to school the next day. We did all of our marketing towards the kids, not the adults, but the kids. So I guess it worked.
I would say it worked very well. I think you taught a lot of minor league owners how to promote their logos, and those people in the stands buy popcorn and beer and Cokes, don't they? What possessed you to want to put a AAA team in Nashville? Because that was not an easy task, because you also had to move the Nashville Sounds somewhere. And from that, it kind of snowballed. I was always impressed that you created this network of minor league teams that stretched from the West Coast to the Carolinas.
Well, we had already brought baseball back to Greensboro in 1979, and I thought orderly procession to get a major league team was to keep moving up. So that was the first thing, is that's progress. You know, it's one step closer to the big leagues. Man, it's a growing city. I know that people always thought, well, AA was better or whatever. It wasn't, but I understood the perception. We kept the players longer in AA than we do in AAA. I understood all that. I always knew I could find a place for that AA team, and it just so happened Huntsville wanted a baseball team, period. And they agreed after some reluctance to build a stadium. And they did. And, you know, it kind of became, if somebody wanted to sell their team, they would call me. And at that time, sometimes you could buy them for their debts. That's how we wound up in Salt Lake City, Eugene, Oregon, Wichita. I wanted to own a team in every league. You could only own one team in each league. So most of my partners agreed with that. Some didn't, but it worked out for us.
What were some of the challenges of running so many ball clubs, though?
It wasn't that hard. Hire a good general manager, give them a game plan, kind of like coaching a team. You know, you put the right people in the right places, get good people. That's a good thing about baseball, is a lot of people want to get involved in it. There are several colleges. Ohio University was the first that had an intern program. We took advantage of that. A lot of our people, like Jay Miller, was an intern. He wound up in the big leagues. You know, still, he's now the general manager at Wichita. We had a lot of people that started out as interns that stayed in baseball and prospered in it. We had radio announcers that made the big leagues, Bob Jameson. I think Steve Carroll's still doing hockey. We had groundskeepers. Jim Angler made the big leagues. The guy does major league stadiums right now, Maury Cook. He was my groundskeeper at Salem. So, you know, it's just come to work for us. We'll get you the big leagues if you want there.
Can't leave out Chuck Morgan.
Well, I could, but I don't want to. Chuck is a legend. He's in the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame. When we were out there a couple of weeks ago, I believe he was within about 20 games of having been in the big leagues longer than Cal Ripken, consecutive streak.
That's great. That's something to hang your hat on.
Yeah.
And then talking about the Texas Rangers, I think in 1983, you were named vice president in charge of marketing.
82 or 83, yeah.
How long were you in Arlington?
4 years. I left for health reasons. They got sick and tired of me.
Another set of challenges being with a major league club?
Different set of challenges. I had 13 departments that answered to me. We didn't have very good teams. Our owner was going through some financial difficulties. But, Texas Rangers were playing in a double-A park that had been expanded, where we had more seats that were general admission than we did have box and reserved. So it was a challenge, but I used some of the same promotions that I used in the minor leagues to get people in there. And that's in 83. We were in first place at the All-Star break. Unfortunately, we traded away a couple of good players, and the White Sox beat us out. And then Bobby Valentine came in, who was a very enthusiastic person that helped us promote and had to do some different things because of the number of seats. So Sundays we couldn't draw very well, so I decided to have concerts after the game. And people like George Strait, Amy Grant, Conway Twitty, Statler Brothers, the Monkees, they helped fill the ballpark. So it was more than one way to get people in. And so we set an attendance record for the old stadium. And I brought in good people like Chuck Morgan and Jim Anglia and others to the Rangers where we sold some suites and did some remodeling as best we could. And unfortunately, we never won a World Series. I would like to say we did, but we didn't.
Well, I really enjoyed talking with Larry Schmittou. What you don't hear is Miss Shirley, his wife, was sitting with us. And David Nipper, my nephew, who produces all of the Skip's Corner episodes and produced the music that you hear also. David's a whiz, and he was there with us as we set up. He's my digital guru and sets up all the mics and does the sound. And he's just as a whiz. But I want to thank Larry again, and I want to thank you for listening in to this episode of Skip's Corner. That was part 1, and we'll have part 2 again next week, and I hope you'll join in for part 2 of my sit-down conversation with Larry Schmittou.